I worked a summer job at a corn maze back when I was a teenager, and even now, years later, I still think about one particular week and what exactly happened out there. It was one of those small town summer things, a way to make $50 a night and mostly just avoid my parents. I was 17 that summer. This was 2019, right between junior and senior year of high school. Our town, Miller's Creek, was pretty small, just under 3,000 people, mostly farms and a couple of Main Street businesses. The corn maze was the big attraction in the fall, but in summer they'd open it up a few nights a week for tourists or whoever. It was called Miller's Creek Maze, real original, I know. It sat off Highway 32, maybe 3 miles out of town. The air out there always smelled like dirt and corn pollen, and sometimes, if the wind was right, cow manure from Peterson's dairy farm. My job was pretty basic. I worked the ticket booth for a few hours, then I'd help out directing people in and out of the maze. My boss was a guy named Dave, mid-50s, always wore a faded cap and a flannel shirt even in 90-degree weather. He owned the land, which had been in his family for generations. He was a decent guy, paid me on time, mostly left me to my own devices. It was boring, frankly, hot, humid, and boring. Every night, before closing, Dave had me do a final sweep. He'd say, "Hey, before you clock out, do a quick lap through the maze, make sure no one's still in there." I thought it made sense. Some folks, especially the old-timers, would get really lost in there. It was a big maze, maybe 10 acres. They'd get turned around, maybe sit down for a minute, and fall asleep. Weird things happened, so I'd grab a big flashlight, one of those old heavy-duty ones that took like 60 batteries, and I'd walk the main path and occasionally shout, "Hello? Anyone still in here?" It usually took me 20, maybe 25 minutes. Most nights I wouldn't find anyone. Maybe once or twice a week, I'd come across a couple making out in a dead end, or some kids hiding and trying to scare me. I'd just tell them maze is closing, time to go, and they'd usually shuffle out laughing. It was never a big deal. This one particular week though, things started to feel a little off. It was a Thursday night, nothing special about it. The weather was typical, hot and still. We had a decent crowd, maybe 50 or 60 people throughout the evening. Dave had me helping at the entrance, counting people as they went in. It was part of the routine, especially for safety, so we knew how many people were on the property. I remember distinctly counting 57 people go into the maze that evening. This wasn't an exact science, of course. Sometimes kids would duck under the rope, or a group would come through talking and I'd miss one. But I tried my best. 57. But I tried my best. 57. I'd helped direct people out for a while, then Dave told me same thing, final sweep, make sure the coast is clear. So I grabbed the big flashlight. It was heavy in my hand, the beam cutting a thick swath through the growing darkness. The corn stalks were tall, way over my head, and they rustled in the slightest breeze, making it sound like whispers. I walked the familiar path, calling out the usual "anyone here?" Maze is closing. My voice echoed a bit, sounding thin against the vastness of the field. I found no one, not a single person. I walked the whole thing, back and forth, cutting through a few of the intersections to hit the main lanes. It took me about 25 minutes, just like always. When I got back to the front, Dave was already locking up the ticket booth. He saw me and said, "All clear?" I said, "Yeah, all clear." He nodded and started walking towards his truck. As I was putting the flashlight away, I did a quick mental tally. 57 went in. No one came out with me. I hadn't found anyone still inside, which meant 57 must have come out before I did my sweep. Then it hit me. I hadn't specifically counted people coming out earlier. I just directed them, waved them towards the exit. But I remember hearing Dave tell one of the other workers, a girl named Sarah, how many people he'd counted leaving. And I remembered it wasn't 57. I walked over to Dave's truck. He was just about to open the door. "Hey Dave," I said. He turned, looking a little tired. "Everything okay, kid?" "Yeah," I said. "Just a quick question. How many people did you count coming out of the maze tonight?" He squinted, thinking. "Oh, I think it was 56. He said it casually, like it didn't matter. My gut did a little flip. 56. I'd counted 57 going in. One person was missing. I must have miscounted. Or maybe Dave miscounted. It was probably nothing. Still, it made me feel a little weird. "You sure?" I asked. He shrugged. "Pretty sure. Look, it's fine. Someone probably snuck out a side exit or something. Happens all the time." "Don't worry about it." He hopped in his truck and drove off. I biked home feeling a little unsettled. It was probably just an error, I told myself. A silly mistake. But the back of my mind kept nagging. 57 in, 56 out. Where was the other person? And why didn't I find them on my sweep? The next night, Friday, was busier. It was the start of the weekend, usually our biggest night. School was out, so a lot of families came. I was at the entrance again, diligently counting every person who went into the maze. I wanted to be extra careful this time. I even used my fingers, like a kid, one for each person. 108 people. I wrote it down on a piece of scratch paper, just to be sure. 108. Hours later, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the cicadas started their nightly chorus, Dave had me do the sweep again. Flashlight in hand, the tall stalks closing in around me. The air was heavy, humid, almost like it was pressing in. I walked the paths, slow and thorough, calling out, no response. The only sounds were the crickets and my own breathing. I found no one. When I got back, Dave was tallying up the cash register. I waited for him to finish. He looked up, wiped a hand across his forehead. "All good?" "Yeah," I said, "but I counted 108 guests going in tonight." "How many did you get coming out?" He pulled out his own little notepad. "Let's see," he rustled through a few pages. He scratched his chin. 107. My stomach dropped a little. Again? One person missing. He noticed my expression. "What's up?" he asked. I told him, "I counted 108 in, and you counted 107 out." He frowned, just for a second. "Huh?" he said. "Well, like I told you last night, people find ways to sneak out. Sometimes they just climb over the fence at the back. It's a long fence, we can't watch every inch of it. Don't sweat it. You did your sweep, that's what matters." I tried to believe him. It made sense in a way. Kids being mischievous, not wanting to walk all the way back to the main exit, but it still felt off. 2 nights in a row, the numbers were off by exactly 1, and I hadn't found anyone. Where were they going? Saturday was even busier. It was a beautiful evening, soft breeze, clear sky, perfect for a corn maze. I was on counting duty again, my mind fixated on getting it right. I counted slowly, methodically, 137 people. I double-checked the groups, even asked a few people how many were in their party. 137. I wrote it down again, big and clear on my paper. The night wore on. I helped with a few lost kids, pointed people towards the concession stand, the usual stuff. When it was time for my sweep, I felt a new kind of anxiety bubbling up. I really hoped I'd find someone in there this time, just so the numbers would match, just so it made sense. I walked the maze in the near darkness, the flashlight being my only companion. The silence was deeper tonight, not just crickets, but a thick, absorbing silence that seemed to swallow my voice when I called out. "Hello? Anyone here?" Nothing. Not a rustle, not a reply. It felt empty, unnervingly so. Again, I found no one. When I got back, Dave was waiting for me by his truck. He must have seen the look on my face. "How many this time?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. He avoided my gaze for a second, then looked at his notebook. 136, he mumbled. It was the 3rd night in a row. Always one person missing. Always one less coming out than going in. I wasn't usually superstitious. I was a science kid, liked logic and explanation. But this was starting to feel wrong. "Dave," I said, looking at him directly. "This is the 3rd night. He finally looked at me, his face pale in the dim light from the concession stand. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. His usual easygoing demeanor was gone. "Look, kid," he said, his voice quiet, real quiet. "It's just a coincidence. People sneak out. It happens. But it hasn't happened before," I said. "Not like this. I've worked here all summer. I've never gone 3 straight nights with a missing person." He sighed, a long, drawn-out sound. His eyes darted around, like he was looking for something, or maybe just trying to avoid looking at me. "All right," he said, running a hand over his face. "All right." He leaned against his truck, suddenly looking much older. He paused, then said, "Look, this is going to sound crazy, But I've owned this maze for 20 years. My grandpop started it. He went quiet again. The crickets were chirping loudly now, filling the silence. I waited. What? I asked. He just shook his head slightly. We never actually let anyone do a final count before, he admitted. His voice was barely a whisper. Not really. My blood ran cold. He looked me in the eye then, and his eyes were wide, almost scared. We never did. It was always a visual check, a walk-through. I never had anyone actually take numbers, never had anyone count them going in that carefully, and then count them leaving. He swallowed hard. My grandpop, he always said, you don't count them too close, just make sure the place is empty. Don't question it. A cold dread began to trickle down my spine. Why? I asked. Why wouldn't you count? He pushed himself off the truck, took a step away from me, then turned back. Because sometimes, he said, his voice cracking slightly, sometimes the numbers were always off. My grandpop, he told me once, he said if you counted them exact enough, you'd always be missing one. But he said it changes. The person who stays. He said it's never the same one. Never a body, just empty, empty, I repeated. The word felt like a stone in my mouth. Yeah, empty, he said it again. Like they just disappear, no clothes left behind, no trace, just gone. So we stopped counting, just went by sight. If the maze looked empty, it was empty. What you can't explain. I stared at him, my mind reeling. This wasn't some ghost story. This was Dave, my boss, a practical, no-nonsense farmer. His face was ashen, his hands were trembling slightly. He looked genuinely terrified. You're telling me, I said, trying to keep my voice even, that this has been happening for years? You've been losing people? He shook his head violently. No, not losing them. They just never come out. They go in, and they don't come out. No one ever reports them missing either. It's always an odd one, a single person. Or sometimes, if it's a big group, just one of them, but never the whole group, and no one ever seems to notice, ever. That last part was what really got me. No one ever noticed. Parents not noticing a kid gone. Friends not noticing their buddy vanished. It made no sense, unless it was somehow random, meaning the missing person had no one to notice. Or worse, the people who did notice simply forgot. He cleared his throat. My grandpop, he said, he always had a theory. He said the maze, it takes a toll, that sometimes it just keeps one as a kind of payment. For growing so well, for keeping the land fertile. He said it was an old belief from the Native Americans who lived here before. The spirit of the land. I tried to laugh it off. A spirit? Come on, Dave. He didn't laugh back, he just looked at me, dead serious. I don't know, kid, I just know what my grandpop told me. And those numbers tonight, they're just like the numbers he told me about. 137 in, 136 out. Exactly one. I felt a profound chill despite the warm night air. I didn't know what to say. My scientific brain was screaming that it had to be a mistake, a miscount, a hidden path I hadn't found. But 3 nights in a row, with the same exact discrepancy, and an admission from my boss that this was a known phenomenon, something generations old, it was deeply unsettling. I just stood there, trying to process it. I still had that flashlight in my hand, its weight reassuringly solid, but it felt heavy in a new way, like a burden. Dave broke the silence. Look, you did your job. The maze is empty. You didn't find anyone. That's what matters. Just don't count too close anymore. Okay? He looked genuinely pleading. I nodded, numbly. Okay, I said. That was a Saturday. I had Sunday off. Monday, I didn't go in. I called Dave and told him I was sick. He didn't question it. He just said, get well soon, kid. Take your time. I could hear something in his voice, a kind of understanding. I never went back to work at Miller's Creek Maze. I found another summer job a few days later, stocking shelves at the grocery store in town. It was boring, but at least I knew everyone who went in always came out. To this day, I still don't know what happened that week. Was it just a series of unlikely coincidences? Was Dave making up stories? But why would he look so genuinely scared? Why would he admit something so strange and specific? The idea of someone just vanishing, never to be noticed, always by exactly one, it's a thought that still keeps me up sometimes. And I never knew what happened to that one person who never came out of the corn maze.